Welcome to the Global Sourcing Watchdog Podcast, your go-to source for the latest news, insightful tips, and up-to-the-minute information on sourcing, supply chain, and engineering. Tune in to hear industry experts discuss crucial topics and share their knowledge.
James, excited to be sitting down with you here today in our new marketing den at Mechanical Power. But quick refresher for those who are not familiar with our company. Been in business since the 70s. We're a distributor, value-add distributor, and you're a big part of that value, which we're going to talk about today. Value-add distributor of mechanical components, global supply chain company, global sourcing simplified, back there behind you. We import product from all over the world for OEM and distribution customers, and you are intimately aware of what goes into that from cradle to grave. So the reason we're doing this, number one, it gets us away from our desk. We've got some colorful personalities in this building, which we want to advertise because I think it's a value point for Mechanical Power. Every company's as strong as their team, and we got a hell of a team, and you're a big part of that. James, for those that don't know, he's our sales and applications engineer. However, he's had a variety of experiences here at Mechanical Power, and also just had a 9th anniversary. He's been with us for 9 years. So, James, we appreciate your continued presence here, personally, professionally, and you definitely bring a lot to the table. And we're going to try and get into some of that today. So, welcome to your first video podcast.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
James, for the audience, and we don't need to know your boss's name in 1983, but can you give us a little bit of a elevator pitch on your background and what you've been into?
Yeah. Actually, I've been thinking about this recently. This June will be 30 years since I entered the full-time workforce.
What are you going to do to celebrate?
Try and make it another 30. Maybe not working, but living. Yeah. No, I've had a very diverse background, a lot of experience. I've worked in warehouse, was a tool and die maker, driven an armored car, worked in an emergency homeless shelter, and managed a customer service department, managed a field service department, and I've been involved with procurement overseas since 2002. So it's actually been a little over 20 years. With the majority of that experience coming here at Mechanical Power for the last 9. So it's been a great adventure, and my time at Mechanical Power has really been the most enriching for me personally and professionally. That what we're going to talk about here today, that I've had the opportunity to actually go to these places and meet these factory owners and see their facilities, and it's been a great experience. So.
When you say this has been the most enriching, I guess what are the few key pillars that you would lean on, as to why that is?
My previous experience with sourcing overseas was more replacement parts, not really involved on the front end, the design side of things. Just sort of, hey, here's the design. We're putting this product in the field. We need X, Y, and Z for replacement parts. Whereas here at Mechanical Power, I've been involved from inception to fruition on projects, right, and new product development. I've had design input, a lot more on the engineering side of things. So it's really given me a great understanding of what goes into this. So many things we take for granted in life, all the technology, all the things that surround us. I never realized how much work goes into every single one of those things. Every fastener, every stamped part, every casting that makes modern life possible. Yeah. So I really have a profound appreciation for that now.
What about, you've had a variety of experiences. You've seen different organizational cultures, the way companies manage people, key performance indicators, and the progress of the business. Do you have any commentary relative to that for Mechanical Power and what you think might differentiate us from your everyday company?
Yeah, I would say the other organizations I've worked at have been bigger, so there's been more siloing, compartmentalization, each individual, each department involved with a narrower band of what the company's doing. Whereas at Mechanical Power, we're a smaller company, we wear a lot of hats. So there's always some new and exciting thing to learn, some crossover that we're involved in. I don't just issue purchase orders, right? I don't just help in new product development. I don't just do samples. I do quality and delivery and logistics and, kind of every facet of it, which I think is a unique experience for me, being at a smaller company like this. And I like it because it never gets boring, it never gets old. You're never just passing memos from one side of the desk to the other.
Yeah.
Like what I think happens sometimes in bigger organizations. So.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love about you, you're a versatile human being. I have a number of nicknames for you, many of which I probably won't share on today's episode. But, I think one of the cool things about MPI is, like I said earlier, we have colorful personalities here. And I think that's part of the fun is, if you can't have fun with who you're working with every day and spending as much, if not more time with than your family, if you don't like that, it can be a real drag. And here I think we have an interesting dynamic with people like yourself that, you're core to our culture. And I guess what I'm saying is our company allows people to be themselves, right? I don't feel like, and hopefully you agree, when you walk in the door in the morning, you don't need to put on a mask and be somebody else. I mean, you're James Rabey every day while you're here. And, for me, that brings a lot of pleasure and satisfaction with where I work and how we operate. I don't know if you have any comments on that kind of topic.
Well, you make me think of, I think a perfect example of what you're talking about is I shaved my head 2 days before my job interview here at Mechanical Power 9+ years ago. And if you can't tell, that was the last haircut I got.
I can tell, yeah.
MPI is non-traditional in that sense, and it's actually very refreshing and very enjoyable, right? I'm not asked to conform to a specific stereotype of the corporate person. MPI embraces each of our individual talents, our uniqueness. And that is, I think, a big part of what makes it so fun to work here.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, not to continue to praise you or overpraise you, but one thing I love about you, you didn't go to school and go through the rigmarole to become the world's, most technical engineer, right? You kind of grew up from a technical perspective in the school of hard knocks, hands-on experience. One thing we talk about with customers with James Rabey is, this guy used to run machines and create fixtures and tool and die work and all that kind of stuff, which I think gives you a very fundamental understanding of, from the ground up, from the embryonic stages of part development, you understand what goes into that, which gives you kind of and then you manage the sourcing process for a period of time here as well. So you've had tangible experience with, when the seed is planted to when the flower blooms into what we all see. And I think you alluded to that earlier, but that's pretty darn good experience to have.
It is, and that technical experience has actually been the most valuable to me in my role here at MPI. I have some college education. I got the business side of things, debits equal credits, all that good stuff that you need to work in this world. But really, the thing that I've drawn on the most is my technical experience. When communicating with our suppliers, communicating with their quality teams, their production teams, that fundamental understanding of what it takes to take an ingot or a piece of bar stock and turn it into what we want has really helped me in the communication piece.
Yeah, good.
So,
well, moving forward, what we're here to talk about today is something very central to, our core principles at Mechanical Power, which I think are relationships both internally amongst our employees. Going back to Jim Doran, the founder of the company, one of the most comprehensively wonderful human beings on the planet, and I think we all agree with that. So, we value relationships here internally. We value them with our customers, and we also value them with our suppliers, and it's a two-way street. And if you don't have a meaningful, deep relationship to make all of that work, you have problems on your hands. You have a business that doesn't achieve its potential. You struggle to grow, right? If you don't have trust with customers, suppliers, and internally, you have problems. And I think one area we excel is relationship management, internally with customers and with suppliers and everyone involved in our supply chain. We're a supply chain company. As we've talked about, we're a global supply chain company. Many of our manufacturing partners that we buy parts from, they're all over the world. And it's hard to really develop a meaningful relationship with people that are 8,000 miles away. So, my background, I've been to a variety of countries to develop those relationships, to go into factories. And it's important to see the factories and make sure that they can do what they say they can do and do ultimately what your customer needs as the middleman, but at the core of it is the relationship, right? And so I've been there, done that. As you know, you've been there and done that, and you most recently did that in the fourth quarter of 23, and that was the first time we had boots on the ground from an MPI domestic employee in China, in Taiwan, going through factories, both current suppliers and nurturing that relationship and reconnecting, but also in prospect suppliers and manufacturers. So let's get into your trip a little bit. You went in the fourth quarter, first visit since the pandemic. That obviously changed the ability to travel. And it was time for somebody to go, and you enjoy it, and you're good at it, so you went. So start at the top. I mean, tell us about your trip, the intention of it, and we'll drill a little deeper into the whys and the whats and what happened as a result of the trip.
Okay. Yeah, I like what you said. We leverage technology. It's great. We've got Zoom, we've got WeChat, we've got email, we've got all these great tools, but there's just no substitute for sitting down face-to-face with a person. So that was a big goal of this trip, was to reestablish that face-to-face, human-to-human contact, no technology. So I spent 30 days over there. So, and it was quite an adventure. As you mentioned, I started out in Taiwan, visited 6 supply partners there, hopped over to the mainland and visited 26 suppliers in 23 days, covered about 4,000 miles in the mainland, and came back home. And the whole experience was just amazing. There's been a lot of stuff in the news about the U.S.-Sino relationship and the trade war and the this and the that. But on the ground, it was the same gracious, welcoming people, culture, everything that I've always experienced overseas. So I'm not sure what's happening between Beijing and Washington, but I can tell you on the ground, it's still the same thing. People wanting to build relationships, people wanting to grow their business, people wanting to help us, help our customers. That has absolutely not changed. And that was a really great takeaway for me, because I wasn't sure what it was going to be like post-pandemic. We're in, what are we up to now? Year 6 of the trade dispute between our two countries. So it was really refreshing to see that on the ground, regular people living their lives, the relationship hasn't changed, hasn't deteriorated. It's just as strong as it's always been.
Yeah.
So
there's a point I'd like to get out of the way. I come from the Detroit area, obviously known for automotive manufacturing, blue collar, hardworking state, Detroit, the Motor City. So I'm as proud as anyone could be of USA manufacturing here, right? All that stuff. However, we're a supply chain management company. Our supply chain is global. It's all over the world. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't fundamentally understand that while China and the U.S. have differences in the way they operate their countries, ultimately we have good people here and we have good people in China. And for decades, we've worked together to furnish product to the marketplace in both simple industries and also highly demanding industries such as automotive. And, despite what's going on politically, how the media kind of spins things, there is a true connection between Chinese manufacturing, Taiwanese manufacturing, Korean manufacturing, South Korea, and the USA to provide our marketplace with products that are needed for everyday stuff. Washers and dryers to wash our clothes, dishwashers to wash our dishes, automobiles. In my firm opinion, the development, the advanced nature of the global supply chain, including China, is such that, as long as I'm alive, and we're not too far off in age, it's going to be a part of our lives. The media can spin it however they want, that no China, we can't buy from China. The reality is it's been a huge part of our domestic, infrastructure and ability to provide everyday products to human beings that are just trying to live their lives. And, I think you would probably agree, China's not going anywhere, unless something really dramatic occurs politically. The supply chain is robust. Now, companies like us, you either win or lose based on how good you are at finding the right kinds of manufacturers, developing the right kinds of partnerships where you have trust, right? And you consistently get what you need, quality, on-time delivery, cost competitiveness, and be able to sustain that over time. So roping that back into your trip, the whole point of the trip, amongst many other things, is to check in on that, right? And make sure you still have the trust and provide updates on mechanical power. Where are we at? Where are we going? And also get that information back from the manufacturing partner, right? Where are you guys at? How you doing? Where are you going? How are you performing for us? So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think, I don't watch the news much anymore, and I don't think you do either, for reasons we'll skip today, but there's so much narrative out there. China's bad. From a manufacturing perspective, that's simply not the case if you're good at what you do. And we find ourselves, and so do our customers, to be pretty good at what we do in making global sourcing simplified. So what are your thoughts on that? I'm really interested in your perspective.
I thank you for that. I love what you had to say, and I'm a huge believer in what you said. Is I think that people don't realize how integral to America's manufacturing success overseas suppliers are. Mechanical power is a perfect example, right? We have many customers in agriculture, snow removal, conveyor systems. We have all these customers that are manufacturing in the United States. They're building their vehicles, they're building their farm implements, they're building their conveyor systems here in the U.S. And a portion of the components that go into those systems are sourced overseas by companies like Mechanical Power. And what we allow them to do is then control their cost structure, thereby giving their customers a lower, more competitive cost.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win-win. Chinese, Taiwanese, South Korean, as you mentioned, all these manufacturers around the world, they benefit. They get to elevate their standard of living, their quality of life by being industrialized. We benefit from a more competitive cost at the same quality level as what would have previously been made here in the U.S. And we're able to pass that savings on to our customers, the OEMs, who can then pass that savings on to the ultimate end user that's going to purchase that equipment.
Yeah.
So it's a win from one end to the other. And I think, unfortunately, right now, as you mentioned, the narrative is 1950s Cold War kind of position that our politicians are taking. And I think that's to the detriment of the American consumer, American manufacturing, overseas manufacturing. I think everybody loses with that type of an attitude.
Sure.
And I can tell you, prior to this visit in Q4 of last year, 2019 was the last time that I was in China. Mm-hmm. And just in those 4 years, I saw a significant jump in automation, upgrades, process improvements, robotics. Even in lower cost regions, they're finding, similar to what has happened in America over the last 30 years, is that many jobs are being replaced with automation. They're being replaced with robotics, right? And that allows for better quality control, better efficiencies, ultimately better sell prices to us, right? Which allows us to pass better sell prices on to our customers. Mm-hmm. So it's surprising based on the narrative that I see, right? I think maybe the media might portray it as the people living in the Stone Age, or they don't have quality control, they don't have process control, it's different. I'm here to tell you, they've come a long way in the last 50 years since Nixon's first visit over there.
Yeah.
And I have visited manufacturers in both Taiwan and China that could stand up to any U.S. or European manufacturing facility I've ever visited.
I have too, and I think the perspective here is, a Chinese manufacturer and a manufacturer abroad in your typical low-cost regions, the floors are dirt and...
naked light bulbs.
and folks, who are laborers or operators are maybe not of age. And granted, there is some of that, but again, coming back to why mechanical power and why are we good at what we do, we have mechanisms in place to vet those things and make sure that, things that principally are just wrong, that we don't support that and we don't have partners like that, right? I've been in hundreds of factories overseas in China, Taiwan, Thailand. And those are the things you look for, How old are the folks who are working there? How long have they been there? What's the average tenure? Are they treated well? So those are the kinds of things we look at to make sure that we're with a good manufacturing partner. And, as a reminder to everybody, we're not looking for a quick hit. Our relationships with our customers are decades long with our biggest customers. Some of our biggest suppliers we've been doing business with for 25 years, right? So any relationships we do initiate, we want to keep them for a long time. And part of doing that is doing exactly what you did in the fourth quarter of 23 and going over there and spending the time. And, I think one common misconception for some folks here that are not familiar with what goes into it is, oh man, that's really cool. You get to hop on an airplane and 15 hours and all you have to do is watch movies and, have crackers and maybe a glass of wine. And, this is not a vacation when you go abroad. So one thing I really want to dig into here with you is, let's help people understand, forget about a 30-day trip. I mean, let's talk about a week-long trip. What does that look like? What does a day in the life in China going to factories look like logistically in terms of rest? I think people like us, we all have our own approach when we go over there and kind of an MO, so to speak, on how you handle it. But, the days I remember, you wake up, obviously your clock's out of balance, right? Because you got a 12 to 15 hour time difference. Jet lag, you name it. You got to find your way to your hotel. First thing I always wanted to do was take a shower after a 15-hour flight. My God, get me out of these clothes, right? You check in, you're completely just mentally plastered, right, after getting off a plane. Ideally, you only have to be on one plane, but sometimes you have layovers, 2-3 hours. Airports in China can be kind of weird, many delays, fog. But, waking up in the morning, having a big breakfast, getting picked up, going to Factory 1, right? And then, big part of Chinese culture is dining together, right? Which we can appreciate. However, their approach to that is far different than ours, right? Here you go out with a customer, Sure, you might go out to lunch for an hour, hour and a half, but in China it's different. And I'm going to let you get into detail on that. And then what do you do in the afternoon? You go to another factory. You might have an hour or two drive, right? You go to that factory, and guess what you're doing after that visit? You know, you're having a long meal with those folks, and the majority of it is getting to know them, right? They don't really want to talk about business at lunch or dinner. They want to talk about you, your family, get to know you, and that part of it's fun. But over a 3-hour period of time, you know, it's hard to manage mentally and emotionally. If you go to 2 or 3 factories in a day, you have a lot of logistics to get to and from, you know, some of which is unsavory, right? Then you got the long meals, and then you get back to the hotel, and you've got, you know, 100 emails in your inbox from the USA, right? And you're thinking, okay, I got to do this all over again tomorrow. So, you know, a week-long trip abroad like that is difficult and taxing on somebody from the United States. To do it for 30 days. I mean, give us some stats, man. How many, you know, what I remember is I used to stay in so many hotels, like on a 10-day trip, for example. You know, I would stay in 10 different hotels sometimes more. There were nights where I would be walking down the hallway and I'm like, I forgot my hotel room number, you know, so I'll shut up. I mean, walk us through a day in the life of your typical day in low-cost region, visiting suppliers, doing the dining thing, the logistics. So how many flights were you on? How many hotels did you stay in? Give us some of that color from your trip.
All right. Actually, I think starting at the beginning is the best in this case.
And we don't need to know your hotel room numbers, but I just...
No, that's good, because I wouldn't know.
What I want people to understand is just how crazy it gets. I mean, there's some day you don't know what day it is. You don't know what hotel room you're in. You don't remember
Don't know what province you're in.
So what was it like for you in 2023?
No,
Q4?
it's just by coincidence, some very good friends of mine were getting married the day before I left.
Okay.
So I wake up, I live a normal Saturday, I go to their wedding, go home, grab my stuff to the airport. My flight leaves Chicago 15 minutes after midnight, Sunday morning. I land in Taipei at 4:45 in the morning on Monday, not having slept because I'm not asleep on the plane.
And the flight duration from Chicago O'Hare to Taipei, 12, 14 hours?
15 and a half, I think.
15 and a half, okay.
7,500 miles.
Yeah.
So now
That pilot must have been a little conservative.
They did a great job. Smooth landing.
Yeah.
All right. So now it's 5 o'clock in the morning, according to local time, right? So I'm by myself. I've got to figure out the subway. So I've got to download the app.
Pause for a minute. Sorry to cut you off, but I want to go back to something. People on flights domestically, right, are so concerned about when they get on the plane. Are they going to have somebody sitting next to them? So I never flew first class or business really when I went abroad. So ideally you get more legroom. I'm 6'3", you're relatively tall, right? But I would always sit in the middle lane where there's 3 seats, right? And I would sit on one of the aisles. All right, and you would always pray that middle seat was going to be open and you didn't have 3 bodies stacked in the middle for 15 hours. So what did you have on the way to Taipei? Did you have...
Aisle seat, right aisle. So
okay.
I'm like you, always have an aisle seat. That's the only way to fly overseas.
Gotta be. Yes. And this is a real thing. Like I had young buddies at past companies. They didn't get up enough on the plane, and they had blood clots in their legs.
Yes.
And had some serious medical issues as a result, both while they're there, which it's scary. I've been in Chinese hospitals. You know, they can be different if you're in a rural area. And now I'm really going off into the weeds. But so did you have 2 people next to you? Were you stacked 3?
I was, because it's a twin aisle plane for anyone that hasn't flown overseas, right? A Boeing 777 or a 787. Yeah. So I was the right-hand section of seats, aisle. I think I had 1 person next to me.
Okay.
So
immediately next to you, or did you have it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's tough, right? I mean, they might be the best person in the world and weigh 95 pounds with coins in their pocket, but if you have somebody next to you for 15 hours in a capsule, And let's say they got to go to the bathroom a lot. I mean, they're just, I mean, this is the kind of stuff you experience. I've had some really bad experiences. I've had some really good experiences, one of which, and I won't go too far, but I got on a plane one time to go to China, and same thing. I'm in the middle row of the 3 rows. You got one on the left, one on the right, one in the middle with 3 seats. I'm in the right aisle seat of the middle, and the middle seat is open. And I look over to the guy who's on the other aisle, and I said, man, yeah, I hope we're good here. You know, they're going to shut the door soon. I think we're good. And he fist bumps me, and we start talking. Crazy thing is, this guy used to work with my father at General Motors. So they worked together forever, knew each other really well. I told him my name, and he goes, are you related to Dave LaLonde? I said, that's my dad. Who the hell are you? And so that was kind of a cool experience, right? I mean, small world, and we chatted the whole way there. I don't think I slept a wink, but really neat. But I've also had hellacious experiences where you've got somebody in front of you that reclines all the way, and they're bouncing all over the place, or, if you're stacked 3 deep, somebody's got to go to the bathroom every 28 minutes. I mean, it's not fun being on an airplane for 15 hours. I mean, business class is a different thing, but you and I haven't really had that experience. So
you remind me of my first trip to China. I didn't book the seat, and I was the middle seat guy.
Ugh.
Like this for 15 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be dramatic about it, but a lot of people haven't been on a plane for 15 hours, and no. I mean, that's a task in itself.
Yeah, and like I said, I can't sleep on moving vehicles. So like I get on the plane, I've been awake for 16 hours. Right. I fly 15, it's 2 days later. I get off the plane as the sun's coming up. We're landing in Taipei. Right? Now you go ahead, did my bag make it? Was it on the plane with me?
Yeah.
Right? I got to download the subway app, buy a ticket, get on the subway, take the subway to the high-speed train station, buy a ticket for that, take that, I don't know, an hour south maybe to get to my first stop. So that's just so you can begin the trip.
Yeah, and hopefully add your luggage. I've had situations before where somehow my bag didn't come on the conveyor belt.
Luggage made it.
And I got to go to the hotel, and all I want to do is take a shower, and I don't have clean clothes to put on at midnight or whatever it is, right? So you had your luggage?
I had my luggage, right. Made it there with
That's
me.
Good.
1 backpack, 1 checked bag.
Okay.
You can survive 30 days in Taiwan and China.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So one thing we haven't clarified, many times I would go abroad and I didn't have help on the other end. We're fortunate because we do have 2 employees in China, Gordon and Daniel. They're great guys, and one or both of them was with you pretty much the majority of the time, right?
Yes, the entire mainland portion.
Okay.
In Taiwan, I was just there with our suppliers who were so amazing in helping me prepare for this trip. You got to take this train to that train. Here's your hotel. Go here.
You're hitting on a good point, by the way. So this trip, 30 days, how many factories again?
32 different suppliers, maybe 40 factories.
And all over the place, right? So how much time did it take you and the guys in China to plan for this trip? I mean, you guys were talking about this 90 days in advance?
Oh, more. 4 or 5 months probably when we really started.
I mean, literally like, what you see in a detective's office on the wall where you got strings attached to pins. I mean, you guys had to go to that level to logistically plan for this trip, right?
Absolutely. I was only in Taiwan 6 days, including the day I landed. I covered the island from the northern tip in Taipei to Kaohsiung and the southern tip. All that travel, all those logistics, 6 days cover basically the entire country, top to bottom. Then hop a 90-minute flight to cross over to the mainland, meet up with Gordon and Daniel, and then spend the next 23 days covering the country from Xiamen to Shenyang to Chengdu, back to Shanghai. Which, if anyone pulls that up on Google Maps, it is about the continental United States we covered from south to north and east to west and back.
When you were over there, I knew how busy you were, so I didn't want to bother you much. I tried not to email you at all, but there were, I think, 3 or 4 days where I sent you a text. I'm just like, how you doing, man? Are you hanging in there? Because Not everyone here has had the opportunity to go over and have that experience, and I know how grueling a lot of it must have been for you. But every time I did that, you responded, "Hey, man, hanging in there, doing okay. We're having a good trip," and you were fortunate you didn't have any health issues or car accidents or hit any mopeds. A lot of mopeds in China. Right?
Yeah, a lot of scooters.
And it's crazy, you'll be in a van going down the street and you look over and you got, a family of 5 on a moped, and there's a 1-year-old infant, on the front of it. And you're like, what's happening here?
Yeah, and actually that's often the best way to travel in China is on the scooters. Because you can be a vehicle on the road, and then when your light turns red, you can become a pedestrian on the sidewalk on your scooter.
Yeah. So I kind of gave an outline of what a day in the life for me was like. So take your trip. I mean, what was a typical day for you over there when you were over there for 30 days? From the time you woke up to the time you laid your head on the pillow at night, what happened in between?
So to your point about number of days versus number of hotels, I would guess in 30 days, probably 25 or 26 different hotels. So it's a 5 a.m. wake up, you get ready, don't unpack too much out of your bag because then you're living out of the bag, right? 5 a.m. up, ready, down at breakfast, 6:37, picked up, hour drive, let's call it, because everywhere's about an hour in China. If you ask anyone how far it is to drive there.
That is true. Yeah. And it's not always an hour.
It's not always an hour, but it's about an hour. First factory, tour it, you're giving them a presentation on mechanical power. Here's the update. Here's where we're at. You're hearing their presentation. Where are you guys at? Tour the factory. Maybe a lunch, back in the car.
Most likely a lunch.
Yeah, probably.
Unless you plant the seed that you just logistically can't do it, right?
Yeah.
But even if they know you have obligations, they're putting a hard push on you to go to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they'll accommodate.
And we're not talking about going through the drive-thru and sitting in the parking lot. We're talking about going into a restaurant, going into your own private room with a big lazy Susan. A lot of people in there, right? And you're talking 2-3 hour lunch.
8 to 12 people on average.
Yeah. And where do you sit at the table in typical lunch or dinner in China?
Let's see, away from the door, and usually with the factory owner within 1 or 2 seats of you.
Right.
When it's the 3 of us.
Is your experience like mine? You always sit kind of at the center of the table, and ironically, there's always a bright light above you shining down on your head, right? And who tries every dish in typical lunch or dinner over there? How many dishes would you say come out on the Lazy Susan?
10 to 15.
I was going to go 20 to 30.
Really? Yeah, I guess if you count all the appetizers too. I'm thinking main courses.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and everyone gets spun to us as the guest first. Right? So always very gracious. That's definitely part of Chinese culture. They would never touch a dish without offering it to you first as the customer, as the visitor.
You feel pressure, right? And you're more adventurous than I. But I remember the first couple times I went over there that I was nervous to eat some stuff, And,
it's slightly different fare than what we get in the Midwest.
People think of Chinese food here, and it's not real Chinese food at all. So
no.
Fortunately over the years I was able to grow more comfortable with what was going on in the process, because there is a process, right? I mean, you're trying the food first. You might never want to eat that stuff, but I've eaten a lot of stuff I didn't want to eat, but the meaning of that is the meaning of showing face with the Chinese culture, right? And if you try something you really don't want to eat, they really appreciate that. I mean, that's like a meaningful thing to them, right? So have you had the same experience?
I have. The meal is a much bigger part of the overall culture than I think it is here in America. Like you said, we may take a customer out or a supplier out, you grab a steak, you go out to dinner, whatever. Over there, it's a much more important piece of the whole interaction, that social time, that learning about them learning about you. It's different. But I am a very big fan of it, as exhausting as it can be.
Yeah.
I think that's a lesson where I think American business could take a page out of the playbook of Chinese business as far as that's concerned.
I was a deer in headlights first couple times I went over there. I was not used to that level of attention. You mentioned when you show up to a factory, very different in the Orient, right? When your van rolls up, you got a good portion of their team standing out on their porch, their steps, waiting for you with a sign, welcome James Rabey, we love mechanical power, right? And handshakes and pleasantries, and they are very welcoming, right? And it's more formal than I think it is here in the United States, and I appreciate that a little bit. I don't like attention that much, but when you're over there, you are treated very well, and you need to become accustomed to, okay, I am the client in this case, and just get used to that level of attention, which was tough for me, whether it be in the meeting or especially at the meals, and you are the one trying everything first when it comes out. You're trying to show face, like I mentioned before, and do some things that take you out of your comfort zone. You don't grow unless you get out of your comfort zone a little bit, right? And these trips, like you went on, it gets you out of your comfort zone, no question about it. So, back to a day in the life. Get back to how you would summarize a day that. I think people here have this, you went out to this great restaurant for 3 hours, trying all this great food, big deal. You had to go sit in a conference room for a couple hours, but, they look at it like a vacation, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So your typical day over there, this trip, so keep us going.
Yeah, quick recap, right? Up at 5, breakfast at 7, factory by 8:30, 9.
Yeah.
Do that first visit, you got your lunch, now you're in another car. If you're lucky enough that your two factories are in close enough geographic proximity, maybe it's only 1 or 2 hours in the car. Second factory visit in the afternoon, you're going to do all that. Then you're going to do a dinner, which if lunch is 2 hours, dinner's 3.
Dinner's always longer.
Yeah. So if you're lucky, you're back to your hotel between 9 and 10 p.m. New hotel, by the way, could be a new city, new province.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. Now, a lot of times you'll wake up as close to that first factory visit. You'll finish that, you'll do lunch, you'll back to the high-speed train station. Now you've got 1, 2, 3 hour high-speed train ride. Then you're getting picked up at the destination train station. So now maybe you don't even make it to that second factory till 3, 4, 5 o'clock. When you're starting the factory visit piece, right? Now you're not out to dinner till 7 or 8. Now you're not back to the new hotel till midnight.
Yeah.
And it's very little downtime in between. I think we took one break for 2 days. Out of those 23 days we were traveling over there. Our weekend was like a Monday, Tuesday in the middle of it, because the factories are open 6 days a week. Mm-hmm. So, and you can even get some guys to meet with you on Sunday.
I've had many of those experiences where, the weekend is work also. So you do have very little downtime. And one thing I want to point out too, because it's important to mechanical power, family, and work balance, right? And, we're lucky in the sense that, my father, for example, had to travel a lot globally, when I was growing up as a kid, my sister and I. And, I recall talking to him on the phone every now and again. But, now we're fortunate to have this technology called, FaceTiming, right? And when I had children, I'm not ashamed to say it on camera. When I had to go on these trips after they were born, I'd be in tears, basically crying, heading out to the Uber to go to the airport because I knew I was leaving my kids for 8 days. But the savior was being able to see them and talk to them through FaceTime when I was there. The challenge, given the logistics of a day in the life, right, when you're on one of these trips is, when am I going to do that? And you have a huge time difference. So you have limited windows. hopefully the technology works, right? But you have children, you have grandchildren, you have a loving, awesome wife at home. So, not only are you getting through a day of everything that we've talked about so far, then lurking in the background is your day job and your emails and, work is still happening, right? And you're still a part of that. But you're also trying to fit in, how's my family doing? Can I see them? Can I talk to them? And in my case, parents, family, worrying, I'm 8,000 miles away. Oh my God, is he all right? So you got emails coming in, you got texts. I mean, how do you manage all that when you're on a trip like this?
International cell plan. They have the most amazing cell coverage in China.
Interesting story. I just saw randomly in the news in the past week that some guy was on a trip abroad, I think a vacation, and he had a $142,000 bill for data, international data. Clearly, he didn't know what was going on before he went. And I had one of those situations where the bill was a couple $1,000 or something like that, and we dealt with it. But sorry, another tangent. But you need to have that figured out before you go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you shoehorn it in when you can. Right, so I can send a bunch of texts from a high-speed train. Right, it might be 3:00 in the morning here, and I may not see a response till, 6 hours later. But the cell phone is amazing. I can't imagine what it must have been like to travel before this, because I'm like you. Early morning here or early morning there is late evening here, and vice versa. Right. So I could usually catch up with the kids or with my wife at the very beginning or very end of my day. And my youngest daughter's kind of a night owl, so sometimes I get a text response at 3 a.m. when I was on the high-speed train.
And texts are good, but nothing replaces FaceTime, right? And being able to see them and interact with them. And I just recall that was the biggest challenge for me when I had to do these trips after I had children. So difficult just to be that far away. And a 5-minute FaceTime call would just make everything okay. I think about my dad and his inability to do that, and I can't imagine how tough that was, 30 years ago when this didn't exist, or 25 years ago. So, all right, so we've kind of covered, logistically how challenging it is to go to 2-3 factories a day. You got two long meals in there. Often you're invited to go partake in some social stuff, right? They like to get wild and crazy with some of their clients and sing together and drink Chinese alcohol, which doesn't exactly taste like Kool-Aid. And you're lucky because you don't drink. Many Americans that go over there a lot have their own name for Chinese liquor, most of which are unsavory. But so you got that element too, because that's part of showing face, right? Is partaking in the social, cultural stuff that ties into business, and some of that's okay, and some of it's not okay, and you need to put your foot down where you have to. And I think you probably know what I'm referring to, but so there's that element it's another thing to deal with. Right, and so much goes into it, and I just don't think the majority of people here that haven't done it understand what goes into it day to day, planning the trip, getting through the trip, achieving your objectives and getting home and getting back on the right side. So. Well, let's get into the objectives a little bit, right? I mean, how would you summarize the purpose of the trip? I talked a lot about relationship management, the importance of FaceTime, but, objectively, business to business, what were you trying to do?
All right. A couple of high-level objectives. For some of the factories we visited, it was the first time. Because we're constantly looking to forge new relationships and find new quality sources. So some of the factories was the first time anyone from Mechanical Power here domestically had been to visit them, but we had been doing business with them for 2 or 3 years. We got started during COVID. Travel was an impossibility, so we had no choice.
Right.
So that was a piece of it, and reestablishing the connection with our legacy suppliers, the people that have known us for years. We visited them many times. 4 years is a long time by anyone's measure. So just to get back there, how you doing, how's business, what's new, what's different, and reestablish that connection. I would say those were the two highest level objectives of it. And always, whether new or existing factory, right, kind of a quality audit, if you will, is always part of what we do, right? Where are they at? Processes under control? What new equipment do you have? What are you doing differently than the last time I was here? I had mentioned robotics, automation. They're constantly evolving over there, so we want to stay abreast of that, so we know what products maybe historically we didn't offer our customers, now we can. Hey, we tore down our foundry, we built a new one, check this out, now we can do this, now we can do that.
Yeah.
So it kind of a mix of all those things, I think, was really the high level objective. And what I've found is, even though you may only sit down with a supply partner once a year, that once a year face-to-face meeting, sharing the same physical space with that person, that resonates throughout the coming year between visits. Like, you can feel that I'm not just Rabey at mechanicalpower.net, right? I'm not just an imaginary email. I'm a human.
Man. You're going to get bombarded with emails.
Yeah, there it is. It's out there now.
Yeah. We'll have to cut that out.
Yeah. But it's amazing what just that one moment, those few hours, how that resonates through the business relationship, through the personal relationship with these supply partners. It was something I never realized before until I had actually done it. You say, what's the big deal? Send them an email. Let's do this. But now when I'm communicating with them using technology, I'm picturing the person. I know their name. I know their face. They know my name. I'm a real human. I'm not just some magical message from the ether. And I think that's just, I can't overstate how important that is to our business and what we're able to do here.
And I think, for people like yourself, you have a very dynamic, outgoing personality. You're engaging. I find you to be very present. I've been on trips with folks that approach it very transactionally. You can kind of tell they don't want to be there, right? If you take the time and you devote yourself to being in the moment, being engaging, talking about family, talking about life, you might even share a joke or something. You're able to refer to those things with these folks, right? And that builds stock for the relationship, right? And that positions you to, they're going to need something from us eventually, and we're going to need something from them, right? And your likelihood of those things coming to fruition is far greater if you have more of that FaceTime, if you have more of that real-time engagement with two willing parties, and you're there for a reason, and you execute, right? And that's one thing I'm proud about with our team is, we don't approach that stuff transactionally, right? I mean, I can imagine how you were. I've seen you with customers and suppliers here, but I could see it like I was there in my head, how you operate, and people love you for that. And that's how you do business. It's how you get things done, and you get them done the right way without cutting corners or doing anything unethical. But it's about the relationship, and you just kind of outlined that was, the overarching objective. But you also went into specifics as well, from a quality perspective. How are you delivering on time? Let's talk about cost, right? Because cost isn't static perpetually.
No.
So it's not all just, hey, how you doing? That's great about your family and this, that, and the other thing. I mean, you do need to talk about some business stuff, which I believe you did. And by the way, you put together some wonderful trip reports. That's another element to this. Something that I've really held near and dear to my heart throughout the years of doing this is, you cover so much, you got to get it down on paper, right? Not only for the business to understand what you did, or what needs to be done going forward, but just to remember what the hell happened, right?
A lot of pictures, a lot of notes.
I mean, if you're going to, and pictures is another thing. You know, I like taking pictures to remember where I was, and the amount of time it takes to put together a trip report from a 2-hour factory visit, meeting, and then a lunch and everything you learned from that, or a dinner, getting that all onto paper, both in picture form and bulleted, you know, summary of the meeting, as well as action items from the meeting on both sides. It's a, man, I approach it my own way, and I know you struggled to get it all done afterwards because of just the sheer amount of stuff that you saw, you did, and all the notes you took. So any comments on that?
Yeah, and I take that responsibility very seriously, right?
Yeah.
Because as a representative of mechanical power, right, I'm the one from here domestically that gets to be there. So I feel that I want to convey that experience as best I can to all of you here that didn't get the opportunity to visit the factory, through pictures, through bullet points, through notes, right? To try to recreate the experience as best you can to somebody kind of second person, if you will. Right? Because I could say, oh, it was great, and it was this, and it was that, but I feel as the one traveling, I have that responsibility to the organization to really bring back something meaningful that someone here can read and gain a deeper, better understanding of that supplier, of their capabilities, of where their business is tracking this year, up, down, straight.
And that's something you need to know too, right? Is are they growing? If they are growing, that means they're doing something right. You know, if they're regressing, that means something's wrong. You need to understand what that is. You know, I always wanted to understand where they were at from a capacity utilization perspective, how many shifts you're running, how many employees, average tenure. There's a lot that goes into it, but I know you got into a lot of those specifics, and it is something you have to take seriously because it's no different than having a meeting here. There's good meetings and bad meetings, right? Good meetings have an objective. Everyone understands the objective. You stay on point. You get through it. You document things you need to do after the meeting. You communicate that to people, and boom, you do it. If people are just getting together talking and nobody writes anything down, you know, what the hell were you doing in the room, right? It could be a waste of time. And I've seen good examples of good meetings, and I've seen really good examples of bad meetings that, you know, make people not want to be in meetings. You know, no one wants to be in meetings, but the better you're at doing it. And supplier visits are no different, right? If you're not prepared, so you had to prepare for those too. Where am I going? Why am I going here? What is their significance to us? What is our significance to them? What am I trying to achieve? It's not just shaking hands and talking about family and having a meal together and managing the relationship. I mean, you're there to achieve something too, right? And you have to prepare for that. And then the work during and after is getting it on paper, getting that out to who needs to see it, following up. So just the amount of work that you had to put into that, I mean, it's crazy, especially for a 30-day trip.
Yeah. 32 meetings, 32 agendas.
Yeah. So, James, how would you summarize, I mean, there's so many different avenues you could go down, but what biggest takeaways from your trip? What did you achieve with the key factories? You know, what remaining work do we have to do? What feedback did you get from them? Any comments you can share?
Yeah. Overall, achieve those two major objectives I talked about. Establish that first face-to-face meeting with some of our newer suppliers. Reconnect with our legacy suppliers. So at that high level, I believe we absolutely achieved that. And we're also, another big part of what we're able to do was you're able to get the real information on the ground, right? Not what the media outlets are telling you, not what CNN or the rest of these guys, right?
Not only that, but what you get in person at a manufacturer versus what you get in an email can be two very different.
Yes.
So the media is one thing, but you know, what you see, accomplish, and gather, and all the berries you put in your basket when you go through a factory, you meet with their people, it's a different ball of yarn than what you get in an email.
Yes, anyone can look like NASA on their website to actually get there, to actually see the facilities. is huge, right? There's no replacement for that. And I really like kind of getting the information from the source, right? We covered a lot of geographic regions, a lot of different business segments, a lot of different types of manufacturers, varying sizes, diversity, scale. And I would say one of the big takeaways is a generally soft demand in 2023 that I think has spilled over into 2024.
Yep.
With only a couple of exceptions, every factory I talked to was down 10 to 30% year over year, 23 versus 22. And I think that trend has continued into 24, hopefully improving.
So we all have our take on what's driving that that shortage, right, of sales or the softness in demand. Your take?
I think the trade dispute between East and West is starting to tell. I think that companies are moving outside, specifically talking about mainland China. I think organizations are starting to look outside of there. Now, I don't believe they're reshoring most of it, as the politicians would have you believe, that they're going to be building it down the street from you. I think what I've seen is people looking to other Southeast Asian, Pacific countries, whether that's the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, India, I think has benefited from the East-West, U.S.-China dispute. So wouldn't it be wonderful if it was 1950, right? And everything was made down the street and it was just like it was post-World War II, right? But that's just not the reality of it. We live in a flat world. We are interdependent on China, Taiwan, India, all of these countries, right? We sink or swim together. So even though I think we're starting to see some damage, if you will, shrinking in the Chinese economy, their manufacturing is still strong. Their efficiencies are up. Their automation is up. They're looking for ways to do it better, faster, more consistent quality. And I believe that global demand is going to bounce back this year into next year. That's going to help. And I've already seen some signs of kind of some warming to the U.S.-Sino trade relationship. I think even the Cold War hawks in Washington are realizing how interdependent we are with China, and I think this is all positive. I believe they're going to weather the storm. None of the factories I talked to were worried about closing their doors, worried about demand not bouncing back. I think we're just at a lull here.
Yeah, I mean, the other simple reality, too, you were talking big picture geopolitical stuff, but the pandemic freaked all of us out, right? We had never been through something like that before, and the way things logistically went with trying to get containers from the Orient to Long Beach or whatever port you're importing from, people went nuts with replenishing inventory and brought as much as they could in to weather the storm of COVID-19 and the pandemic. And so I think some companies, I mean, we know it to be true, are bleeding down, a peak of inventory that they brought in to get through the pandemic. So I think that's contributing to some of the shortfall in China as well. But you're talking big picture, and you have a really good vantage point on that from my side.
Yeah. And that's why I said I think it is going to continue to improve, because I think those inventories are getting moved, where everything's back from COVID. It's another thing on the ground in China was a few more masks than what I saw in 2019, but no other material change to moving, traveling, hotels. None of the interactions were different.
Sure.
So that piece of it we've moved on from, just like we have here in the U.S. And you're right, I think as the inventories go down, hopefully the inflation levels off or turns into deflation for us, right? That I think is a residual of COVID. I think everything seems to be trending towards more stability, more return to what we knew 4, 5, 6 years ago, pre-pandemic. which I think, again, as we said earlier, is good for everybody. It's good for Chinese people, it's good for American people, it's good for the world that we have a positive, strong trade relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just 2 or 3 other things I want to touch on in closing here. So we focused a lot on your time and the purpose with the manufacturing partners, the suppliers, right? I think the other big win for you and our team was the fact that you spent that much time with our 2 employees in China, Daniel and Gordon. Working with employees that are 8,000 miles away is difficult. Granted, we have technology now we didn't have before. You stay really close to these guys, obviously tons of emails, but you also virtually speak to them weekly, right? Mm-hmm. On, I believe, Thursday mornings?
Yeah, Thursday morning our time, Thursday evening theirs.
And I hear those discussions, and you're talking about the NBA and the stuff like that. So we have a relationship with these folks, but similar to comments you made, nothing can replace FaceTime with suppliers. Nothing can replace FaceTime with employees that we have abroad as well. Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, no, I agree. It was great. You may not think you could travel 23 days with 2 coworkers. People would say, "Oh, geez, no," but it was actually a wonderful experience, and you're basically with them from the time you get up and hit breakfast till the time you go back to your respective hotel rooms at night. And just like with the factories, but on an even greater scale, you're really able to strengthen your relationship. I'm able to share information about mechanical power here in the U.S., the U.S. economy. They're able to share information with me. What are they seeing in the economy there? And, I consider them my friends. Not just my coworkers, right? I tell people I have friends that live in China that happen to work for the same company.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Through the years, going there more than 20 times and everything, all the experiences I've had, I'm proud to say I have friends there too that I still communicate with. A lot of it's business oriented, but like you said, I think people think it's just an entirely different world, but ultimately it's a lot of good people just trying to live their lives, right?
Absolutely.
And, some people are able to embrace that and develop meaningful relationships, and I think others struggle with it based on whatever. But, I'm thankful you're on our team for many reasons, but, you're really good at that. And what better guy to go to China for 30 days than James Rabey based on how you approach that, just who you are as a person, so... What you came back with, I think, is huge for us, for our employees. Tying it back to mechanical power objectives, this is a company that's on the come up, right? I mean, we've basically doubled sales in the last 5 years. We're trying to diversify our offering a little bit and be a larger value proposition to our customers. We want to retain, of course, the business that we already have, right? Keep our long-standing supplier relationships sustainable and improve them over time. We do have a continuous improvement mindset with everything that we do, and suppliers are no different. So your trip, I mean that's conducive to that, right? For a company like ours, it is a necessity to go abroad, to spend face time with suppliers, with manufacturers. Not just from a relational perspective, which I think we focused on a lot today, but also to go through, business stuff, quality, delivery, cost, inventory, new product development we didn't talk much about, but, you're integral to that function of our business, new quotes that we get in, where can we grow with current suppliers, where can't we have to go out and find other suppliers to grow in those areas that we want to grow in as a company, right? So all that stuff fits into, the objectives of the company, a growing company, who's seen and done a lot of new things in the last 5 years that we haven't in our near 50-year history. And so this trip, I think, is a really good example of how do you do that. It's 100 different things, but part of it is, it's typically not a 30-day trip to the Orient, to the low-cost region, but, the frequency of doing it is very important. And, I just want to thank you again for for everything you did, everything you came back with, and obviously we're still working through follow-up items and action items from your trip. But anything you would say in summation?
Mechanical Power has afforded me an opportunity to go somewhere I may never have gone, have experiences I may never have had.
We didn't put you in business class, though, man. I apologize for that. 10 grand for an airline ticket is detrimental to the profit and loss.
No, it is. You know, you talked about your father had been a world traveler as part of his career. That is not the case in my family. I'm the only person in my family that has ever had an opportunity to do something like this. And, you know, I really have tried to make the most of it, tried to bring the greatest benefit back to Mechanical Power on the return on investment that you guys have made in that. So both professionally and personally, I'd like to thank you and Mechanical Power and Jim Thorne for this opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, you know, we're fortunate. We, like you said, we're afforded opportunities to do some things that not everyone are. And granted, it's not all fun and games, which I tried to make a big point of our discussion today, because those trips are daunting. They're grueling. They're taxing. They're, you know, you get sad, you get lonely, you miss your family. You know, I had some tough times when my kids were little and I was abroad. So it's a sacrifice. You're made a sacrifice, you know, for your job and for the company. And, you know, unfortunately, it's something that we have to do. But if you engage properly, you embrace it, it can be a really rewarding experience for you personally, for our company, and also for our partners, you know?
Absolutely.
So I knew that this trip, I mean, my gosh, 30 days. So I said, James, what are you going to do on the back end of this trip, man? You need to take some time to decompress, regulate yourself. So tell us what you did when you got back.
Actually, because of the wacky flight situation coming home from Shanghai, it took me 3 flights to get home. Shanghai to Seattle, Seattle to Atlanta, Atlanta to Detroit. Which, by the way, when I booked it was nonstop, Shanghai to Detroit. I recall. But by the time the airline changed it on me, that was that. So I actually spent a few days in Dearborn, I believe it is, right? Yeah. Just west of Detroit. Yeah. And got to visit the Henry Ford. Got to see the big house, but I don't know if I should mention that with Brent in the room as a Michigan State guy.
Yeah. That's a neat place to see. I mean, great campus too.
My wife actually came and met me and picked me up in Detroit, and we got to spend a few days, the second half of that week in Michigan, just kind of getting acclimated. Yeah. As you know, Brent, the jet lag coming home is brutal.
It is, yeah.
It's you land 2 hours after you left. Kind of feeling.
From my experience, you know, when you get over there, it's nighttime typically. I take that important shower after being on a plane for 15 hours, and you crash, right? And you sleep pretty good, and you're pretty fresh the next day. You have some tough afternoons throughout the trip. But when you come back, my gosh, I mean, it can take up to, just on a 7-day trip abroad, it can take a week, 2 weeks to get back to normal here.
I think that's
so after
reasonable.
30 days, I mean, how long did it take you to get back onto Central Standard Time?
Actually, this was not the worst jet lag I've experienced, surprisingly. I don't know if spreading it out over 3 flights, and I think it was 32 hours real time from wheels up in Shanghai to touching down in Detroit. But I think within a week I felt semi-human. But it was probably 2 to 3 weeks before I really felt like a Midwesterner again. Yeah. Back on the right clock with everybody else.
Well, I remember when you finally returned to the office, I think I gave you like a full-blown hug. I said, man, it's good to see you. You know, I think I probably can appreciate more than anybody here what you did and what you went through from my experiences. And it was good to have you back, man. Good to have your personality back in the building. And hopefully you don't have to do too many more 30-day stints, but we can conclude here today the importance of doing these trips in some form or fashion is essential to upholding who we are as a company and doing what we do well and sustaining that, right? So
absolutely.
From everybody here at Mechanical Power, sir, we thank you for what you did. Huge sacrifice, and you accomplished a lot, and Yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing the path that we're on as a company, and it was fun to talk to you about your experience and your vantage point of the importance and the why of these trips, right? It's not to check a box. It's to do a whole lot of other stuff, and you did that, and you do it really well, and we thank you and appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time today to sit in our marketing den and do something a little wild and crazy.
And I'm already planning the next one. So.
Oh, yeah?
I'm already visualizing it.
Any sneak
for
peeks?
Q4 this year.
Next trip.
Next trip, yeah.
Next trip, okay. What do you have in mind?
Well, good a venue as any, right? This is something I've been thinking about is India.
Yeah.
India, China, Taiwan, back home. Because, hey, if you're already 1,000 miles away, why not?
So good news is we need to do that, so thanks for having that thought. Bad news is I'm going to have to go to the boss and talk about the budget, but I think we'll be able to accommodate you. But I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've ever had anybody go to India from here, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And us, like a lot of the U.S. companies that I referred to earlier, we're also diversifying just to make sure we're managing our risk and we're not solely dependent on mainland China. So we've expanded into India these last 5 years. It's time for a little bit of that sharing the same personal space.
Yeah. Well, James, thanks for your time today. Great discussion. Thanks again for what you did on the trip. And we look forward to sharing more content like this because I think it gives people a better understanding and appreciation, and it can be amusing at times as well. Which, as you guys know, I try to infuse some of that to our daily lives here. But this is important stuff, and you can make it fun. And
absolutely,
today was fun talking to you about your trip. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Onward and upward.
Shishi.